It feels like a weird night to have a dark futures event. I think we should all turn to the person next to us and just say, it's not going to be okay. And there's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so yeah, thanks Nick for the intro. Thank you guys for having me. It's actually a big thrill for me to be here tonight. I've been to the two previous, I think I was the only person that whooped for the two previous Dark Futures events. So I've been to the both and always found them spine-tingling and thought-provoking and oftentimes mind-blowing. So hopefully my contribution to the Dark Futures canon is some of all of those things. Also just want to say up front that, like many of you probably, I'm a practitioner, I guess, in tech, so don't get to think in the abstract as much as I'd like. So this for me is kind of a first stab at putting some of these thoughts together. So, and as I heard a friend say just the other day, I'm a learner. So I'm trying to, I think, put into words and onto slides things that I'm kind of observing and trends that I feel like have been kind of happening my way and red lines that I've seen kind of through a number of things that I do in my work, and the net result is this, I guess, sort of like loose theory. So we're going to get a little abstract, but let's do it. So first, an existential question: who am I? My name is Jordan Eshpeter, and I work at a place called Invoke. At Invoke, it's a great place to work. We do all kinds of product design and development with lots of really great young startups and brand new companies like that, and then also at an enterprise level, working with big companies to help launch new things. And one thing, who here works in tech? I guess let's just get that out there right now. Yeah, pretty much all of us. That is wild. So you've probably heard the expression, as I do all the time, about making the world a better place, about leaving the planet in a better condition than what we found it. And I think to kick things off, what I want to posit, and maybe where I want to begin, is just on the notion that maybe the world isn't all that much better thanks to the work we're doing, or if it was, how would we even know? Against what standard are we measuring this better world that we're trying to create? We've already had one Orwell reference, and let this be the second. So you will have to get used to living without results and without hope. You will work for a while, you will be caught, you will confess, and then you will die. Those are the only results that you will ever see. There is no possibility that any perceptible change will happen within our own lifetime. We are the dead. Our only true life is in the future. We shall take part in it as handfuls of dust and splinters of bone, but how far away that future may be, there is no knowing. It might be 1,000 years. So of course, what we have in this passage is a very bleak and immediate kind of doom-filled future for the Winston character. But that's juxtaposed to the idea that there's this true life, there's this notion of a better future that he'll probably never see. And when you have a imminent doom scenario paired with something like a hope in the future and a true life, I think what we're talking about is eschatology. Anyone know what eschatology is, or is this a term that we've come across in our studies in tech? It predates the kind of digital technology revolution of the mid-century and comes more from the world of philosophy and theology. But I think it's a helpful construct, and it's kind of the lens that I want to use as we kind of go through some of these points. My question is really, are we all kind of in almost like a groupthink eschatological scenario? And the word eschatology has Greek origins. It means study of the last things, study of the end times, the ultimate destiny of the human soul, that type of thing, small stuff. And I took the trouble to try to break eschatology into 3 parts just to help us understand and to kind of know when we see one at work. The first piece is a hope for a future age. So this is, of course, the idea that there is a better way that we can live. Certainly, we can do better, and our friends to the south for sure too. But this is ultimately a new way of being, a new way of relating, a new way of doing life, kind of the perfect and complete way that humans and our souls perhaps are meant to be. The second piece is a prediction of a doomsday scenario. These are oftentimes described in great detail. We know exactly how a deity may interfere into history, or how an astronomical event could cause something terrible to happen, or just exactly what might happen in a apocalyptic war. And these are all throughout our history and our literature. You can go back to like the Hebrew prophets or the book of Revelation in the Bible, the writings of Nostradamus. Y2K was one of these kind of. There's the blood moon prophecy and the Mayan apocalypse. There's no shortage of ways this world will end, or certainly the ways people believe the world will end. And then the last piece is what I'm calling just imperatives for adherence, just this idea of how then, in light of those, are we to live. When you have a sense of how time might end, and maybe how it began and where you kind of fit in relation to that, that's quite a narrative arc. So we're able to start to place ourselves in history or in time. And this is a really easy and I think almost, fail-safe way of finding purpose or meaning in our life. We start to have an idea of exactly how we're to live. So when we talk about eschatology, what I think we're talking about is really the macrocosmic purpose of every single thing. I got about 10 minutes to go. So another kind of helpful shorthand for this is the idea of a means to an end. You've heard this kind of utilitarian, philosophical kind of quip, and also the idea of the ends justify the means. So in this situation, we're talking about the end of time, the last part, the final point, the finish, the conclusion of time. So if we do the math backwards, we're able to begin to, again, derive the purpose and the intention and the reason for which everything kind of came into being. So what I'm trying to say is what we believe about the end of days determines how we live, and that has universal implications. So future scenarios, and I know I'm talking to a bunch of future-y people, but there's broadly speaking 4 kind of outcomes we can look forward to into the future. And I lifted this from 0 to 1 in studying Nick Bostrom, but I think it's helpful. So number 1 is the idea of recurrent collapse. So just this idea that there's going to be this kind of ongoing perpetual redistribution of prosperity and ruin from one place to another across the globe and over time. This requires a certain level of trend faith that what happened previous is bound to happen into the future, but broadly speaking, this has been somewhat true. The second scenario is that of plateau, that there's going to be more convergence over time and that poorer countries and people will start living like richer countries and people, and that will sort of flatline onto some predictable trajectory. The problem with both of these scenarios, recurrent collapse and plateau, is that we know they're unsustainable for human life. So that brings about the pressure, I think, that many of us probably feel in the backs of our minds to innovate, to make new things, to contribute to scientific breakthrough. And these are super important and worthy goals. But if we're not successful, we reach our third outcome or scenario, when the shit finally hits the fan. And it may have just hit the fan. But this is an extinction event. So for the purposes of the eschatology that I'm going to try to kind of build here tonight, this is our prediction of a doomsday scenario. And it's a weird thing to be a person like me, standing in front of people like you, just one sec, talking about doomsday, because it makes me sound crazy. And if you agree with or believe in anything I'm talking about, then you're probably a little crazy too. And that's because a doomsday event has never actually happened. People have been talking about it for all of time, and we're still here, still ticking. But we have this, I guess, tick where we tend to place ourselves in the middle of history. We just can't really help it. Where usually the past in our imaginations is just about as long as the future, and we find ourselves always right in the middle of history. But that's, of course, factually completely not true. Yesterday may have been the last full day of human history as we know it. But we've had collapse events. We've had like societal wipeouts of the Mayans, of the Greenland Norse, on civilization on Easter Island. We've had kind of global catastrophic warfare. We've dropped atomic bombs on one another. So it's not so crazy to think that some of these events could happen again, and in an increasingly connected world, that we do trigger a series or a sequence of events that bring about something completely catastrophic. So the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, I don't know if you guys track the Doomsday Clock, but it's a pretty, I don't know, kind of awesome metaphor. They track or put forward or prognosticate our proximity to a doomsday event using the 12-hour clock. So at our kind of best point in modern or recent history, we've been 17 minutes to doom. At our worst point, we've been 2 minutes to doom. And currently, I mean, this is before yesterday again, we're at 3 minutes to midnight. So we're probably like at least 2.5. So last year, the Science and Security Board moved the doomsday clock forward to 3 minutes to midnight, noting the probability of global catastrophe is very high, and the actions needed to reduce the risks of disaster must be taken very soon. That probability has not been reduced. The clock ticks, global danger looms, wise leaders should act immediately. So what imminent risks am I talking about? And I think you guys will all track with me here. First up is nuclear war. This is funny in a way to me because I grew up in the 90s when the Cold War was warming. And this seemed kind of like a quaint, interesting, kind of old-fashioned idea. But it's back with a vengeance. There's nuclear tensions, of course, with Iran, with North Korea. I don't know if you heard the news, but Putin and Russia just rolled out their Satan II missile, which is like an awesome name for that motherfucker. Which could allegedly wipe out a space the size of Texas or France. And it's not the nuclear war that we're afraid of course we are, but it's the nuclear winter that would accompany it. Extreme climate change, no surprise here. We've been driving, making things of plastic, and the world's been getting warmer and hotter, melting our polar ice caps, changing our coastlines, so on and so forth. Global pandemic, so our increasingly dense city living situations and the frequency with which we're shipping people and products every which way in the world just creates the conditions for disease to spread. Ecological collapse, our ecosystems are becoming increasingly fragile as more and more species become extinct and go away. And then this like radical idea of a supervolcano, so that a volcano could erupt something like over 1,000 kilometers cubed of material into the world. And again, it's not that we're afraid of, it's the volcanic winter. So if those don't do it, then a bunch of other things totally will. So major asteroid impact. I don't know if you guys heard the news again just a few days ago. Another asteroid just whizzed by Earth, missing us by 310,000 miles, which triggered all of NASA's Scout warning systems. That's a possibility. If that doesn't do it, then the sun's going to keep getting warmer and eventually scorch the Earth. If that doesn't do it, Andromeda and Milky Way are going to have a collision. If that doesn't do it, the sun's going to become a red giant and envelop the Earth. If that doesn't do it, the dark energy phenomenon is going to keep stretching out the universe and pull everything into the spaghettification effect. And then if that doesn't do it, stars are going to burn out and we're going to reach absolute zero as the background temperature in the universe. And if that doesn't do it, everything's going to become a black hole. And then we're going to have a swamp of low energy photons, and that's the end. This isn't supposed to be funny, guys. This is serious stuff. This is dark fucking futures. But there's good news, because we could have also a takeoff scenario. This is our hope for a future age. So this is the vision of the future that we're all working so hard towards. Of course, we're going to be richer in the future. We're going to be better looking in the future. We're going to have cool presidents in the future. Starting, not yet. Michelle 2020. Or Kanye, that's cool. That'd be awesome. Kanye's a Republican, I would think. Anyhow, so the future's going to be better. We all know that. Well, we hope so anyways. So there's all kinds of takeoff scenarios as well. And I think these are important because this is really where I want to focus. So historically, we've had lots of ideological takeoff movements. The Enlightenment wanted to apply this kind of hyperlogical, math and science-based view to everything in the world, and then the modernists after that wanted to celebrate everything new and detach completely from everything that had brought society forward to that point. In Marxism, socialism, and communism, you had this idea of this classless, stateless society where everybody was able to take and give according to their need, which is very cool. Industrialism, capitalism, and libertarianism. This is basically I guess the upside of this is to say that we want to see what human potential is and how much wealth could be generated. And then, of course, we have everyone's favorite, the alt-left, the alt-right anarchists that just want to burn the whole thing to the ground. And you know what? They might be onto something. Spiritual takeoff. There's other folks that believe that we can have an eschaton or a paradise scenario by way of spiritual transformation. We could have resurrected bodies or live somewhere in eternity forever, or perhaps that eternity comes to earth. We could achieve new states of consciousness, and those would both be awesome too. But where I want to focus our time tonight is on technological takeoff, because this is where you, like me, spend a lot of our time. And how do we know when we're dealing with or encountering a technological eschaton or a technological eschatology? We start to hear words like this: singularitarianism, or the singularity. This idea that, broadly speaking, we can apply Moore's law to human intelligence to grant us some sort of an omniscience. This is a godlike quality that we're after. Or transhumanism, again, broadly speaking, applying Moore's law to our biology and our intellect to grant us kind of the Judeo-Christian idea of eternal life. This kind of omnipotence. Or to get out of Dodge, to become multiplanetary as a species, to travel the cosmos and become omnipresent. And then perhaps the most alluring idea of the sciences and of tech is unknown unknowns, that by unleashing or opening one innovation over here or one scientific breakthrough over there, that who knows how that might be carried forward into the future, or the kind of incremental effects that it might have on the work somebody else is trying to achieve. So we're drawn into just creating for its own sake to see what might come of it. It's all a big experiment. And I think the ethos of the technological eschaton is captured well in this A New Digital Age, Eric Schmidt, Jared Cohen. The case for optimism lies not in sci-fi gadgets or holograms, but in the check that technology and connectivity bring against the abuses, suffering, and destruction in our world. And this is kind of the point here. The best thing anyone can do to improve the quality of life around the world is to drive connectivity and technological opportunity. When given the access, the people will do the rest. We cannot eliminate inequality or abuse of power, but through technological inclusion, we can help people transfer power into the hands of individual people and trust that they will take it from there. It won't be easy, but it'll be worth it. So again, what we believe about the end of days determines how we live, and that has universal implications for all of us. How then are we to live? What then are we to do if this is the scenario we find ourselves? Immanentization, that is the answer. We must immanentize the eschaton. We must picture our utopia or our eschaton and try to pull it forward into history to bring it to earth in this already but not yet kind of scenario. And this is, for most of us, our imperatives. This is the way we're to live in this eschatology. So again, how do we know when we're in an eschatology? Well, in tech, we need to look no further than the mission statements of most of our big companies, or even most of our employers for that matter. So I'm not going to tell you who these companies are, but I think you'll be able to guess. To organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Again, making information universally accessible is that omniscient quality that we're trying to achieve in the technological eschaton. To give people the power to share and to make the world more open and connected. And this sounds incredibly Marxist in that ideological kind of eschaton. To accelerate the advent of sustainable transport, thereby getting our economy off of fossil fuel and extending the life of humankind on Earth, and thereby even our planet. And to enable the spaceflight capabilities necessary to make human life multiplanetary. Again, this omnipresent quality that we're after. So I love this little quote from Don DeLeo. I think it sums up what it is I'm trying to say from his book, White Noise. You can put your faith in technology. It got you here. It can get you out. This is the whole point of technology. It creates an appetite for immortality on the one hand, and it threatens universal extinction on the other. Technology is lust removed from nature. And it's a race, because while on one side we're trying to desperately immanentize the eschaton and pull utopia forward in history, but on the other hand, due to unintended consequences, we run the risk of also immanentizing doomsday. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's some very kind of current examples, some of which I've touched on already. So advancements in chemistry and physics has led to, of course, the introduction of atomic and nuclear weapons, which has held the world in a state of mutually assured destruction for 60 some odd years. Again, our fossil fuel-based development has led to climate change. Mobile and internet technologies have led to our Orwellian global surveillance state. And any other legitimate technology faces the dual-use dilemma that we introduce it for something pure and good and wonderful, and then sinister actors take it and use it for something sinister. And there's more bad news, because breakthroughs in synthetic biology and nanotechnology are introducing new opportunities for weaponization. Artificial intelligence might be able to, conceivably, help us solve all of the doomsday scenarios I've just outlined, but then may decide and make a judgment that humankind is the reason for all of those scenarios and then do away with us. And you combine all of these things and you get some pretty wicked cocktails. You get new kinds of weapons and terrorism, you get new means of distribution, you get new economic and political advantage and disadvantage, you get climate change and ecological impacts, and the sum total of that is the increased threat of global system collapse. So it really could be the end of the world as we know it. And I think that the toothpaste may well be out of the tube, and we will have a hell of a time trying to get it back in, and that's because immanentizing the eschaton and immanentizing doomsday are both great business models. Some of the best and biggest companies in the world are busy trying to immanentize the eschaton and immanentizing doomsday. So the question then becomes, what conditions will accelerate beneficial technological development over potentially harmful technology? And if we're able to answer that, it really could be the beginning of the world as we know it. So I want to pose 3 questions. How can we accelerate the pace of philosophical and ethical understanding over that of technological development? It seems that those disciplines are always kind of falling behind and kind of fuddy-duddy, but it'd be nice if we could kind of put a jetpack on those disciplines and start to speed up their contribution to tech development. Can we perceive an applicable value set to define beneficial technologies and incentivize their development? Are there new venues and curricula for scientists, technologists, philosophers, ethicists, and policymakers to address questions 1 and 2? This is beginning to remind me a lot of Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. A robot may not injure a human being or through an action allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given it by human beings except where such orders would conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. Sounds good? So this is what I'm saying. As an industry, as technologists, as scientists, as people who are committed to immanentizing an eschaton, we need our own 3 laws. Because I need not remind you, the clock is ticking, and we have 3 minutes to doomsday. Thank you very much.